Morning everybody, welcome back to another video. What I wanted to talk about today was in reference to a question that I got on the last video, AI and timeline, four-dimensional timelines and the split we're going through. The question was in reference to the simulation of the matrix and how do we get out of this. It's something that I've addressed fairly deeply in this book because I talk about the simulated reality, what the earth is, and so on within this book. And as I started to write an answer for it, I realized that I should probably go more in depth than just a couple of lines, mostly for people who may not have read the books or people who may not have as much basic understanding to start with. So I wanted to go a little more in depth with this information to kind of help anybody else who might have a question and just to give a better explanation. Also with it, there's some information that I kind of got as I was writing this up, so it's kind of like some new information. So I've talked about the light in the tunnel after death as being the default program in 3D and how to move beyond it in some of my books, and particularly that last one, but some of the other books as well. I've gone fairly in depth in some of the other ones as well. The first step in understanding and how to get out of the simulation matrix, so to speak, is understanding who and what you are and what reality is. Because if you don't understand that, you automatically accept the 3D programs as being real, which means that that's where you're stuck. So once you can accept these truths, and it's probably the hardest thing people have to do is accepting the understanding and the truth is who and what they really are. And I talk about that a lot in my second books, We Are the Real Body Snatchers, where I talk about who and what we really are and what reality is. So once you accept those truths, you know the tunnel program is another program within the third dimension and is a program we have to follow when we accept 3D as being real. Basically, you stick yourself in there. Think of Neo in the Matrix at the end when he realized he was in a program and he didn't have to follow all the rules unless he accepted them as being real. That was the scene where he was shot by Smith. He died. Then he came back again, and when he started looking around, he saw all the codes and so on. He realized that even though he was a part of it, he didn't have to follow all of the rules of the Matrix anymore. And that's the same thing for us. Once we understand who and what we are and what reality is, we can look at them kind of like cheat sheets or something if you want to. So one of the, it's getting out of our heads, out of our mind, the illusion of our minds. It's kind of what they do in the movie. Remember, they said that the body can't live without the mind in the movie The Matrix. So it's essentially what the mind accepts the body has to go through. So one of the other thoughts that we need to move beyond, and this is something maybe we can start changing how we say this, and that is the idea that we die, because we don't. You know, the body does, but the body is just a vehicle that we use within this reality in order to be able to operate and to do different things, but it's not us. So we probably need to kind of refocus our mind on the idea that we don't ever die. That'll make the concept of getting out of this simulation easier, because if you accept that you die, then you're still within the default programs. You're realizing you aren't the body allows you to move beyond those default programs after death. The other thing we need to do before and at the time of shifting, I'm going to use the word shifting instead of death necessarily, is to let go of our fears, regrets, and attachments to the programs of this 3D universe. Once we do that, we have the ability to decide where we want to go after leaving this world. And this information here that's coming up is kind of new information that I got when I was writing this. I don't think I mentioned it anyplace else in the books. And that is the tunnel and the light is like a loading program. Remember in the movie The Matrix where Neo and Morpheus were in the room, the white room? Morpheus told them we can load everything we want, from weapons to anything. They can load anything they want, training simulations and so on. That tunnel of light is essentially that same thing. It's a loading program, but it's loaded with the default matrix programs. That's what we're here showing you what the real world supposedly looked like at the time, but that's what that tunnel of light is. It is a loading program for the default matrix programs. So once a person's in that tunnel or the loading program, their thoughts are scanned, so to speak. People who have gone through near-death experiences, and some who've done past lives have said they remember having a review of their life. Or some others have mentioned they felt like their head was being scanned. Well, essentially that's what's going on when you're in there, because it's almost like a computer program with a scanner. It's going through to see what your thoughts and what your beliefs are, and that determines what happens from that loading program. In other words, what program gets loaded next for you. Let's see here. Let's see. If we still accept the programs of the third dimensional reality as they are, in other words, with the world they just came from, as being real, a person will automatically get shifted back to the reality again, what we call reincarnation. Religious beliefs are a big part of that default programming, as well as thoughts of fear, regrets, and attachments to that world. That's why people having NDEs and past life regression will often see those types of scenarios, what they see, particularly the religious programs that they have in there, because the basic default program is the religious program. And whether you are religious or not religious, everyone has heard about the concept of heaven and hell, being judged after you die, um, having a life review. Those are all things that everyone has heard about. So even if you're an atheist and don't believe, you're still going to be subject to the default program, because is the default program. The religious program is what it is. So, and I'll get into why that is. But anyway, that's within the loading program. Those are the basic programs in there to bring you back into this world. So once you understand that these thoughts that you have in your head, the fear, the regrets, the attachments, and so on, are programs and not what you have to do, it allows you to decide where you want to go after you've shifted from this body. If you have no idea where you want to go next, you could end up in the void for a while or back in the default program. Because remember that chamber, that loading program is going to automatically recycle you back here if you don't have anything else set up in your own head and your own beliefs ahead of time. And if you still have fears, regrets, and attachments. Say, it's your thoughts at the time of death that determine where you go, where you'll end up after you leave this reality, after you shift. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and among some of the more enlightened religions, they say when a person dies, they will have to face their fears. These are illusional fears of the mind and not real. I would add regrets and attachments to that, although regrets and attachments are really fears wearing another coat. Because what is regrets? It's a fear, a regret of not having done something. Attachments, losing something. So it's still a fear. And that's what that loading program is designed to do, is to look for any fears that you may have. What happened in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and some of the others talk about the idea that you'll be facing those as you go through. And this gets into the next part of the paper. If a person accepts that what they are seeing is real, in other words, those programs that are being projected in front of you, they will become lost in that reality and have to deal with those fears or programs before they can move on. I see that as being reincarnated into another 3D life where those fears become their reality. So in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they talk to them about their guru or their shaman, whoever he is supposed to tell the people what they're going to face, and that what you're seeing are illusions of the mind. They are not real. And even those of us who understand and don't have the fears and regrets and attachments, when we leave this world, they're still there. They're just not going to be predominant. So you may still see those. They still may crop up as you get into that tunnel. Things may still be projected. But when you understand that they are not real and you do not have to deal with them, you'll be able to move through them much, much quicker. I mentioned in a couple of my books before that I went to that tunnel one time. It was one of those times when I was outside the body and decided I wanted to go to that tunnel to see if was there anything really there. And when I got up there and with the tunnel and was moving through it, there wasn't shit there. So anyway, that's just what I experienced from it. So when you die or you shift and you don't have those fears, or when you understand that As I said, you may see some of them, but when you understand that they are just illusions of your mind, you will not have to incarnate back into a 3D reality where they will become your life or part of your reality. It's the same as decepting the default religious programs of heaven and hell, being judged, and so on. You'll end up back here again because those are the default programs, and that's why they push the concept of karma, the concept of sin, to get people to having fears and have those things projected. When they tell you that even your thoughts can put you in hell, well, everybody's going to have those kind of thoughts if you still buy into those programs. So you're going to end up back here again. So what you need to do, decide now where you want to go, or that you don't have to follow those default programs. And when you do that, it'll allow you the opportunity to do something else after you shift out of this reality. In other words, you'll pass through those programs quickly. You'll not get caught up in them as being real, and that'll allow you to shift and move to beyond where you really want to go. I didn't say deciding where you don't want to go, because if you have a fear of that you're going to end up going someplace, then that's a fear, and that fear is going to be projected and it'll draw you back in there. That's really, really a strong part of the religious program when people pass on and they have the fear of going to hell because they don't know. They're always convinced their whole life that they're a sinner, they got karma, so that to them the concept of hell is still seems to be real. So there's going to be that fear, they're going to project it, boom, they're right back into this world again. So you could say you'll go wherever the Creator wants to send you, but remember, the tunnel is a loading program, and since the default programs are running in there, you could end up back here again. In other words, going in there and say, well, whatever the Creator wants me to do. That may happen anyway, but go in with your own idea what you want to do, where you want to head to. As I mentioned in my books about our shifting on the timeline in 4D to the spiritual timeline, my goal is ending up in the 5DA. And I've talked a lot about that in the book, so I'm not going to go into that in here. You could even decide to come back here again, only with memories and knowledge, so you could help others if you chose to do that. The point is to decide now where you want to go, at least what dimensional level or timeline, and keep that thought in your mind at least once a day, so when you move on, it will have become a mind or a muscle memory. It's the same thing with martial arts or shooting weapons or anything else that you're doing, dancing, to where you get to the point where you do it enough that it becomes automatic. So the idea is to understand and think about those things in your head, and you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Just simply the thought of where you're going to want to end up going, or that it's shifting to a better, not coming back to the 3D reality, that it becomes muscle memory, so that at the point of shifting or dying, it'll be an automatic thing. Those thoughts will be automatically in your head. You'll understand and remember, and you'll be able to move past that. So this is the other part regarding this reality being a simulation, and can we leave that? I see all creation as being a simulation, meaning it isn't real. If you've read my books, you know that to me, real means something that always was and always will be. The idea is, how can you say something that was is real? You say it was real, well, it's not here now, so how can it have ever been real to begin with? A creation, no matter how long it will last, is still a creation. And a creation means it had a beginning, and it will therefore have an end. So to me, it's not real. Again, you can define the word how you want to, but to me, for something to be real, it has to be, always was and always will be. We can leave this 3D simulation by doing the things I mentioned above. In other words, getting rid of your fears, your regrets, your attachments, realizing that you don't have to follow those programs and that you can choose when you leave. If you do those things, it's going to help you to move beyond that basic program. So to me, all reality is a simulation hologram and is projected on the wall of a torsion field or torus field. When we shift to another torsion field, and I go a lot into torsion fields on my books and what they are and how they work, because I've had the opportunity a couple of times to be in a torsion field and realize that I was the torsion field with me. I could see the lines and the vibrations that were there and understand that the torsion field and I were one in that reality is a projection, a 2D projection, which is a hologram on the wall of this torsion field, and then we, having light pass through us from source, allows that two-dimensional reality, that hologram, to become a three-dimensional world in which we see and operate. And again, I talk about those experiences in my books as well. So each torsion field we are in is similar to entering an underground cave system. This is kind of an analogy. The opening, like a vibration within the torsion field, is small. But once you go inside that tunnel, let's say you have a small opening to a cave system like Carlsbad Caverns, but once you go in, it opens up and there's miles and miles of tunnels. And the torsion field is the same thing. When we enter it, or it enters us, and I can't tell you which, we become a part of it. We then can explore and experience everything contained within that field, all those vibrations. A photograph would be another way to understand it. Take a picture of a mountain range or a crowded beach. Look at the photo and think about how much is in that photo and how long it would take you to explore and experience everything within that photo. That photo is a moment in space, a single moment in space-time, the same as a torsion field. A vibration is a moment in space-time. Each torsion field contains other vibrations for us to translate. Like I said, going into that cave system, when you go into that torsion field, suddenly it opens up and there's all these other vibrations. Same as that picture. When you go in to look at that picture, you got all these different things you can explore, examine all within a single moment of time. A torsion field could even contain an entire timeline or simply a certain number of realities. So as I mentioned before, we are shifting 4D timelines at this point, so we will be shifting torsion fields at the same time. So anyway, that's kind of what I want to talk about, is the idea that yes, you can get out of the simulation, but you just have to understand who and what you are and realize that you don't have to come back here. Make that decision now. So at the time of your shifting, leaving this body, you do not have to go through and get caught up in the default programs. And remember too, as you go through, that any projections that you see are projections of the mind, and they are illusions of the mind. They are not real. So it's not like you have to avoid the tunnel. Everyone will go through that tunnel, but it's a matter of what your thoughts are is what's loaded into that program, which will determine where you're going to go. Do you go to the default program, or do you go to where you choose to go? I've already made my decision. So anyway, have yourself a great day.